Dr. Hauser graduated from North Carolina State University with a Bachelor of Science in Chemistry in 1969 and a PhD in Chemistry in 1974. He began his career as a senior research chemist for Millikan Research Corporation in 1973. They were certain he was going to get that PhD. In 1985, he joined Burlington Industry as the manager of the Chemical Development Laboratory. In 1987, he joined Verkler Company as senior research chemist. He began his teaching career at North Carolina State University in 1997 as an associate professor in the College of Textiles, Department of Textile Engineering, Chemistry, and Science, teaching both graduate and undergraduate courses in all areas of textile wet processing. He became director of graduate programs and associate department head in 2004 and a full professor in 2005. He has directed 31 master's and 21 doctoral students. He has served as a technical consultant for textile wet processing industry and an experienced expert witness for patent litigation. Peter's authored or co-authored 120 peer-reviewed papers, 3 book chapters, 1 book on chemical textile finishing, and edited 2 books on wet processing. He and his co-workers have been issued 10 U.S. patents, including patents for flame retardant cotton blends, exhaust process for dyeing aramid fibers, cationic leaf activator, and ionic cross-linking of ionic cotton. Dr. Hauser has been a member of AATCC since 1977. He has served in the presidential track as president-elect, president, and immediate past president, serving as the chair of the Appropriations Committee over the time 2011 to 2016. He chaired the foundation while president of AATCC and still continues today on the foundation board. Currently, he serves on the Appropriations, Building and Grounds, and Employee Benefits Committees. In addition to AATCC, he is a member of the American Chemical Society, the Society of Dyers and Colorists, and the Textile Institute. Peter.
Good morning. This is kind of like an 8 o'clock class, isn't it? You know, professors don't like it any more than students do. Okay, when I chose this topic, I didn't realize that apparently this is going to be the topic of the conference, because there's been several other papers on Cationic Cotton. So you guys will be well prepared for the quiz at the end. Okay. What is Cationic Cotton and why do we need it? We're going to modify cotton with some permanent cationic charges. And what that's going to do is that is going to attract our anionic dyes that are used to dye cotton. That sounds great, but why do we need to do that? Well, when you're dyeing cotton, especially with fiber-reactive dyes, you're required to use a large amount of electrolytes, usually something like sodium chloride or sodium sulfate, in order to get the dye, which is water soluble, to leave the water and go into the fiber. As part of the reaction of fiber-reactive dyes, not only do they react with the fiber, they also react with the water. And that would mean that you are getting a hydrolyzed dye that has really no affinity for your cotton, and you have to wash it off. And it takes, usually after a dye cycle with fiber-reactive dyes, you've got to go back in again and go to a high-energy wash in order to remove the hydrolyzed dyes. It's not unusual to spend as much time washing off, especially a dark shade, as it did to put the dye on in the first place. And because there is hydrolyzed dye in the effluent, it's going to have color. So you've got salt in your effluent, you've got a lot of effluent, you've got color in it, so it really is an almost a difficult environmental situation. Our good dye stuff providers have addressed this issue, going to dye and even tri-functional dyes to improve the the fixation, but unfortunately, salt is still needed. You still need to wash off the hydrolyzed dye. They've gone about as far as they can go. So we're going to help them out by putting on permanent sites on our cotton with cationic charges and see what we get. You can put a cationic polymer on cotton, usually something that's used as a fix for direct dyes, and it works. Yeah, you can put the fix on, and but you will get ring dyeing because the dye then dyes the polymer, it doesn't dye the fiber, and you usually get poor light fastness. So we're going to talk about a cationic reagent. That's a reagent that will penetrate into the fiber and only react inside the fiber, and so the dye will then go inside the fiber, and you'll get uniform dyeing with usually very little effect on light fastness. You get excellent wash fastness and only maybe a slight effect on light fastness if low. The reagent I'll be speaking about mainly today is 3-chloro-2-hydroxypropyl trimethylammonium chloride, which I'm going to call early in the morning. It's stuff. I'm going to call it chip tack. Okay, and if you were here yesterday, you heard chip tack mentioned a couple times. You've also heard another quat, a diquat mentioned. You've also heard talk about DADMAC. Those are alternative ways of getting catenized cotton. And I believe that the conclusions that we're going to draw today will be applicable to any method that you heard yesterday also as far as catenizing cotton. And this is what our friend chip tack looks like. It's chlorohydroxy water. You've seen his reaction yesterday several times. How do you make chip tack? You take chlorhydrin, trimethylamine, and acetic acid, means hydrochloric acid, and you form your chip tack. Chip tack is available in an aqueous solution. It is not the reactant. It is a precursor to the reactant. The reactant is actually the epoxy form, which I'm going to call EPTAC, epoxy, chip tack. This is the reactant. This is the reactant that actually will react with our cellulose. So the reactions are EPTAC reacts with cotton, the hydroxys on cotton under alkaline conditions. The ring opens up, and you get an ether linkage, and you get a permanent cationic charge attached to your cellulosic fiber. Unfortunately, just like fiber reactant dyes, EPTAC can also react with water, and you get a hydrolysis reaction, and you get a diol, we call this a diol, and this is kind of waste. It doesn't stick to anything, and it needs to be removed before you proceed. The way that we like to apply a chip tack in my group, we find that a cold pad batch method is most appropriate and most efficient and easier to do in the lab. Mentioned chip tack is available in 65% active solution in water. From several suppliers can provide chip tack. Found that about somewhere between a 5 to 10% on weight of fabric chip tack, depends on the amount of dye. We'll talk about that later. Usually need about 2 moles of hydroxide per mole of chip tack. You need 1 mole of hydroxide just to make the epoxy, and the other mole of hydroxide is used to activate the very convenient. You pat it on, you put it in a plastic bag, and come back the next day. Grad students love to work with it that way. And we like to neutralize with something like citric acid, because when you dry it down, if it's used acetic, the acid will volatilize, so we use citric acid here so that when it's dry, it stays acid. You heard some stories yesterday about the odor that comes from chip tack. possibly goes to Tack. If you keep the fabric and neutral or slightly acid conditions, the odor doesn't form. So that's why we use citric acid in our neutralization. Find out to only get about a 50% yield. And other methods, cold pad batch, other than cold pad batch, like pad steam or pad dry cure, gets even lower. If you do use a mercerized cotton, however, you can get quite a high yield, and some very deep, dark blacks can be made using mercerized cotton catenized with chip tack. As was mentioned yesterday, we prefer to catenize during the preparation step. And it is possible, especially with knits, you can apply the chip tack to gray knit. You don't have to scour the knit before you apply chip tack. How do we dye catenized cotton? We're able to use modified conventional procedures. We don't have to change procedures too much. We find it's better in our cases to just use the recommended amount of alkali, time, and temperature that the dye stuff manufacturer suggests. However, we do remove all of the salt from the dye bath. Then we can reduce the amount of after washing. As we also saw yesterday, usually only takes 1, maybe 2 rinses at the most to get rid of at the end of the dye cycle compared to the conventional ways. So that's basically what we do, and then maybe come back and neutralize if necessary. So we talked, there was several benefit discussions yesterday about catenized cotton. I'm going to present the work that my group did, so you'll be able to see what we believe. You will definitely reduce the amount of water, energy, and time necessary to dye cotton, especially with fiber-reactive dyes. You will get higher color yields. The amount of efficiency of coloration is much greater. Here's some data that we collected. We used cotton and also a catenized cotton. We used a 5% chip tack application with 3% dye. It was blue, reactive blue 225, 10-to-1 liquor ratio. This was done in laboratory conditions where we could measure the water and the energy. This was actually done by a undergraduate working in my lab. In this particular case, it took 130 liters of water for every kilogram of cotton. With catenized cotton, it only took 23 liters. I should mention the color fastness was equivalent in this dye. As far as energy, the student was an engineer, so he could calculate all these millijoule things. Okay, so took. I just know that this number is a whole lot smaller than that number. So I'm a chemist, not an engineer. So. Time took less than half the amount of time to get the proper dye. And we measured the dye exhaustion by looking at the dye bath before and after with a spectrophotometer. 99% dye left the bath, only 88% with the conventional. K over S is a measure of the depth of color. The higher the number, the darker the color. So we got a darker shade, so we could have used less dye to get the same shade. Half the time, much less energy and much less water. There's no question that this is something that we should look at in great detail. I mentioned we use the more efficient use of the dye. In this particular case, this was a dyeing that was done on conventional cotton on the left with 0.6% dye. The same dye was used to get the same shade. On catenized cotton, only took 0.4% dye, so about a third less dye. And you can see this is after the dyeing. Before rinsing, this water could be used again. So if you match the number of dye sites with the amount of dye you've got, you can recycle. Well, that's all great and dandy, but if it costs more money, no one's going to do it. Right? Let's be honest. So we looked at the cost. went to a pilot plant with a facility that was able to measure all the water and the energy and all of the inputs dyeing on a larger scale. This was 55-pound tubular knit dyings, 4.3% chip tack. I'm sure that was supposed to be 5%, but somehow the wet pickup didn't come out right. Several shades were matched, and it was found that you could use 1/3 less dye to match the shades. Right? Very good. And if you add up everything, the cost of energy, the water, the time, the machine time, everything, you're going to save about 20%. So you're saving money, you're getting better dyeing, less pollution. My goodness, what could possibly go wrong? I mean, we're talking wonderful here. Well, let's just see what could go wrong. You now have a fiber that has a permanent cationic charge. That means it is going to attract those anionic dyes very, very quickly. It's going to go on. It's kind of analogous to dyeing acrylic fibers with basic dyes. If you don't have a good retarder and good control, it's going to be unlevel. So we have to deal with this. Okay? What we found is that if you take exactly the same dye formula on Cationic cotton that you used on conventional cotton, the shade is a little bit different at the end. It doesn't come out exactly the same shade. That means you got to rematch all of your colors. And the reason that is that since all of the dye will go on with Cationic cotton, you're going to get a different ratio of the three components on your final color. So therefore, you've got to rematch all of your shades. And some people don't want to do that, but that's, if you want to use it, that's what you have to do. And finally, if you happen to have more dye sites on your fiber than there's dye available, you have an opportunity for dye pickup during laundering. And I looked up last night, there's things called color capture and color snag or whatever the phrase they use. And those little things that you buy to put in your washing machine that will absorb all the dye that comes off your other clothes is actually Cationic cotton, a high level of Cationic cotton. So what you're doing, if you Cationic cotton, don't cover up all the dye sites with dye, you're putting your color capture back into your other dye. So we've got a couple of things we have to deal with. So we're going to talk about how do we take care of this unlevel dyeing, how do we take care of the shades, and how do we take care of this dye pickup. So dye levelness. You could consider anionic leveling agents, things that are used for dyeing wool and nylon. The leveler goes on first, the dye can't get there. So you put the leveler on first, and as you heat up the dye bath, the dye gradually displaces and kicks out the leveler, and you get your dye fabric. We found carboxymethylcellulose is pretty good. A couple of grams per liter, you get a fairly good leveling effect. That wasn't good enough for some of our grad students, so they decided to go a little bit deeper. Okay? This is some work that was done with a high molecular weight carboxy anionic polymer. You'll see this kind of graphs a little bit later, but this shows we determined the percent exhaustion as a function of time. With no leveling agent, you can see that all the dye jumps on in about less than 5 minutes. That's not good. So as we increase the amount of this particular material, this is a reactive red 230, with a reasonable high level of cationic character, as we increased it, you can see the dye went on more slowly. These little arrows are where we added the alkali to get the dye to actually fix. Don't really know why it dropped off, but we're not going to worry about that, because what we find is that, yeah, it goes on level, but you only use half the dye. That's not good either. Look at another one. Here we found with this particular leveler, we're able to get essentially the same amount of dye on at a much slower rate, so we feel there's weight. So there are leveling agents available. We haven't done an exhaustive list. I'm sure there are other ones that could be used too. So using a dye leveler will certainly improve and can overcome the levelness problem. We thought, let's take a look at the structure of dyes that are used with cat-house cotton, and maybe we can understand why some dyes work a little bit better, because we find that some dyes exhaust and fix better than others. So we were able to get 5 dyes with different structures. These were in the crude form. They didn't have any other compounds in them. It was just the pure dye with different molecular weights and different number of anionic groups. And these are the dyes that we were able to get: reactive blue 19, violet 5, red 11, red 198, blue 109. Molecular weight of these dyes goes from a little over 600 to about 1,000, and also the number of SO3 groups go up across also. So let's see what happens if we use these dyes with our cat-house cotton, and see if we can understand something about the structure relationship. People who like, as Keith Beck said, chicken wire. Here's our chicken wire. Reactive blue 109 is the highest molecular weight. It's a dichlorotrazine. You can see it's 2 chromophores. Blue 19 was the smallest dye. It's ethylquinone. Red violet 5 is this guy. Red is here. Red 11. Red 198. So this happens to be a second dye. Anyway, so what do we find? We did an equilibrium absorption, and we put in this case, 2.5% chip tack solution as well as untreated. We put a lot of blue dye, blue 109, at 40 degrees C in a beaker, put the fabric in, came back later. Okay, it was under agitation. What we found, equilibrium conditions, as you would expect, the untreated cotton, it took a long time for it to equilibrate. We talk about the 48 hours before it reached an equilibrium situation. Cat-house, 5 minutes. You can see it really jumped on. So let's see how those different dyes reacted under equilibrium conditions. I love this slide. I love it because it proves, look how beautiful the data lines up. Isn't it great when the data works? It's just great. I love it. The highest molecular weight dye, which was the blue 109, is here. The next highest here. The next highest here. The next highest here. And the lowest up there. Lower molecular weight dyes go on at a higher rate than the higher molecular weight dyes. So what that means that if you have a dye formulation with a mixture of molecular weight dyes, you may have some issues with, not sort of unlevelness, but you may have some issues with the shade not building up to what you want. So you should try to pick your dye formulation that has dyes that are roughly equal molecular weight. That's a great slide. Let's look at the exhaustion of these dyes. You saw the equilibrium. Let's talk about exhaustion. We used a lab dye machine, Mathis dye machine. We used the Humetrix monitoring system. Looked like this. This is the dye machine, JFL. What Humetrix does, it takes a small sample of the dye bath on a regular basis and measures the concentration of the dye spectrophotometrically. You have a calibration curve you started with, so you know how much dye is in the dye bath at any period of time. It's in our lab system. we looked at those 5 dyes and we looked at them under equimolar conditions. So therefore, we had the same number of molecules of each of those 5 dyes. That meant we had to use different weights of the dyes because they're different molecular weights. Because different give us equimolar dye. We carried out identical dyeings with and without Cationic cotton, but we did not add any salt in the Cationic dyeings. We put salt in when we did conventional dyes. So what did we get? Oh, we used the amount of alkali that the manufacturer recommended. So it's a lot of information here. For the blue 19, we use 1.8% dye, violet 2, about 2%, the red 11, a little over 2, reactive 8198, about 2.8, and up to 3%, just to get the same number of moles in our dye. Untreated cotton, 82% of the dye exhausted during the dye. Okay? 69 for the violet, 70. So you can see the typical problem you have with reactive dyeing with cotton is that there's a lot of dye that doesn't actually go on fire. Doesn't, you know. So then we did the same dyings with 2.5% chip tack, a relatively low level of catinization. And my goodness, we have less dye goes on here than on untreated cotton. What is going on? Well, you think about it. There is no salt here. Okay? There is salt there. We don't have enough dye sites here to absorb all that dye. So it actually, what it tells us is that if you're going to do these kind of dyings, you better have enough dye sites for the amount of dye you have. So not only do you have to worry about not having too much dye site, you don't want to have, well, you got to worry about having enough on there. So you need to be sure you have the right amount of dye sites. And as we go down as we go up in concentration of the number of cationic sites, you can see we get very good exhaustion. And even over here, even remember the high molecular weight one doesn't want to go on. So you have, even though this guy's got five anionic groups, and all those cationic sites, it still doesn't want to go on. It's almost counterintuitive. You'd think that that it would want to, a high molecular weight one would want to exhaust better, but because of all of the anionic groups, but it doesn't turn out that way. And so here I highlighted the fact that in every case, if you don't have enough dye sites and you dye the dye without salt, you're not going to get as good a result as you would have gotten with salt. How are we going to color match? Existing primaries, color primaries don't give good results, give poor matches, because they were developed on normal cotton. So what we got to do is we have to come up with primaries developed on Cationic cotton to use with Cationic cotton. That's what we did. We found that at the first shades here, conventional primaries, about 0.3% dye in both cases, a little bit less here. Initial CMC match, 1.2, not bad. 4.2 over there. So the conventional primaries didn't give us a good start. Second shade, a little bit higher, darker shade. Almost dead on if you use a Cationic primary. Still not too bad, but still not as good as it could be with the conventional. A dark shade, 2.4% dye, less than half the amount of dye necessary to get the same shade. Came in with delta D of 2 versus almost 5. So using primaries that were developed with Cationic cotton, you can match your shades a lot easier in production. Now, we've got to deal with our dye capture problem. Okay? We thought we should try to demonstrate this in the lab. So we used the AATCC test method 661 QA, which is in the laundrometer. What we did is we dyed a piece of regular cotton with a high concentration of a blue reactive dye. We did not afterwash. We simply dyed it, pulled it out of the dye, okay? We then attached it to untreated cotton and ran it through an AATCC 661 2A wash. And you can see that essentially no color transferred onto the cotton. There was obviously a lot of hydrolyzed dye available, but it did not stick to the cotton because hydrolyzed dye doesn't stick to cotton. That's why you gotta wash it off. But when we put on about 7.5% chip tack fabric, it sucked it right up as expected. We have made our own little color capture product, okay? So what are we gonna do? Well, what we did was we looked at a lot of different products that could cap these dye sacs. And after an extensive series of experiments, we found the product. It's a high molecular weight sulfonic acid. It's not a polymer because it's a high molecular weight material. And repeating that same experiment, you saw uncapped, we got a high color transfer. If we capped it with this Cerfax, 2 grams per liter, 15 minutes at 60 degrees as an exhaust treatment, it did not transfer. So we were able to cap it and prevent this thing from occurring. In addition to dyeing as cotton, you can also print it. We found that if we screen printed a pigment, we improved the wash fastness. We think that has to do with the fact that the pigment had better adhesion to the cat-and-mouse cotton than it did to the regular cotton. We screen printed direct dyes. Now, anyone who's going to screen print direct dyes on cotton knows they're going to wash right off. That's what put a fix on it. But we put a fix on first by making it cationic. And we got great wash fastness. So you can print direct dyes directly onto cotton with no fix. Get good wash fastness. We did inkjet printing of fiber reactive dyes on a cat-and-mouse cotton. We got better yield, and the line sharpness was improved. Okay? And we didn't have to steam it or wash off as much. So everything is great, right? But we still have to worry about the staining. If you try to print on cat-and-mouse cotton with a lot of white ground, you're going to get some potential color transfer unless you have a fix in here. But use one of the capping agents that we have. We think that we now have a lower cost approach to more sustainable cotton dyeing. We have addressed the leveling concerns. If you match the dye sites and the dye concentrations, works out fine. Color matching, use the right primary. Select dyes with similar exhaustion rates, that seems to be the same molecular weight. In color transfer, we can use a capping agent. Sorry. Gotta go back. Excuse me. I have to give proper credit. Blood, here you go. Now, thank you. Go to control it. We're working on it. Just do control it. Just go to the sorry about that. Or just keep out of it. Keep out of it. You go to the right, that's fine. Okay, this will work. These are the people that actually did the work, so they need to be credited. Notice several of our students are here, so thank you all very much. And These are the people that pay for it. Gotta thank them. Cotton Incorporated, the majority of it. Thank you, Cotton. Also with help, some help from Dow, from Haynes, and from the TCS supply. And thank you for your attention.